Palworld Story has gotten a huge update, and since I last covered this game a year ago, you're probably wondering what's changed in that time. Even among a myriad of controversies, including things like accusation of theft of models, plagiarism from other games, and even an actual patent infringement from Pokemon, Palworld has continued to put out regular content updates, adding new mechanics, pals, and items, while also producing 2 major content updates in the past year, which added new islands and bosses for you to challenge. And with all this new content, we've got a lot to cover. First, we'll establish some important base information like the different regions of the map and the bosses that reside in each, as well as the relevant notes of a mysterious character who's referred to as the Castaway. Then we'll jump into the journals of each boss found scattered around their respective regions. Lastly, we'll be casting some speculation as to the mysteries the game hasn't yet revealed, using the information presented to us both in the journal notes and even the PAL deck entries before wrapping up with the big picture. So stick around if you want to learn all about this simple yet fairly well delivered narrative. Grab your PAL spheres, hop on your jet dragon, and commit thousands of Geneva suggestions as we explore the story of Palworld. Throughout the islands, you can find 23 notes from someone only known as the Castaway, as he talks about how he came to discover the island's existence and his journey throughout it. We'll only be covering a few of the notes because a majority of them have no relation to the story. They're just kind of like gameplay things. In day 0 of his journal, the Castaway mentions how the island is enveloped in a thick fog that hides it from view from the outside world, and as he attempted to steer away from the fog, he was sucked deeper into it and was then attacked by some unseen assailant who completely destroyed his boat before he was able to find his way to shore. In day 6 of his journal, he mentions that it's odd to him that there's an enormous tree which he speculates is the world tree from so many myths and legends, and that it's so large that even fog wouldn't be able to hide it, but yet it's unseen. He further muses that the only thing he can come up with is that there's some mechanism in place that prevents the tree from being seen from the outside, and that the mysterious powers of the pals must have something to do with it. And speaking of pals, that leads us to a character who is particularly obsessed with them, a tower boss that's just a tad bit disconnected from reality.
Pals, such strange creatures. These noble beings have upheld our civilization since ancient times. They not only boast impressive intellect, reflexes, and adaptability, but are adorable to look at as well. How could anyone not come to love them? Humans are savage animals with an insatiable appetite for the proliferation of their own kind. They subjugate other species and enslave them. They engage in pointless strife, consume flesh for no reason, and develop beyond their needs. When one takes into account their hideous appearance, how could anyone not detest them? Humans capture pals and use them. If a pal is confined to a so-called pal sphere, they become obedient to their master. What abhorrent tools they become. One can only say, this is the greatest stain in the history of our civilization. Pals and humans were originally meant to live alongside each other in mutual support. Not a relationship between master and servant, but one of equals. A harmonious coexistence, if you will. Eating a pal for food is akin to blasphemy against God. I will recount the day I met Lylene. I remember that the fog was so thick that day that I could scarcely see in front of my very eyes. I was simply walking along the berry fields, as I am fond of doing, when I heard the clamorous voices of those abhorrent poachers. When I looked to where I could hear the sound of their filthy screams, I saw them throwing spears at a pal resembling a vivid lily flower. She was so beautiful and elegant. At that moment, I knew what I must do. I pierced their dirty hearts through the back and destroyed their scattered spears. They shot at me a few times, but it was a trivial matter. I could not touch such a beautiful flower with my trembling, blood-stained hands. Instead, I returned immediately to my base. When I arrived, I found the queen of the lilies there, awaiting me. When she touched my arm, my wounds were healed, and the fatigue began to fade away. From that day forward, I decided to become companions with my queen. She is the only flower that blooms in this sad, dark world. Won't you join the Free Pal Alliance? The Free Pal Alliance is a long-standing organization that works to protect pals. We have lived together with pals since antiquity, and each of us has a deep love for the wondrous creatures. We have 5 traditional commandments. 1. Thou must not eat pals. 2. Thou must not overwork pals. 3. Thou must not abuse pals. 4. Thou must not use pals for experiments. 5. Thou must risk thy life to protect pals. Wouldn't you like to join us and protect the pals you love? Your life in service of protecting pals is a small price to pay. The flesh and blood of humans exist only for the glory of pals.
Founded by Lily Everhart, the mission of the Free Pal Alliance is much akin to that of PETA in the real world. Lily wants pals to be equal to humans, and for them to not be used for labor or food.
On some distant shore of the island, there exists an islet where certain pals live. Not a single one of their kind, strange as it may seem, resides on the main island. Perhaps they can only flourish in a particular kind of environment, or their natural predators roam the main island. Then again, perhaps they are simply unable to cross the sea. I do not know the reason they exist there, but I am certain that they must be protected. Just imagining those poachers setting up a hideout there and ruining their way of life is enough to make my blood seethe. With every visitor from the outside to their island, the pals' numbers dwindle. At this rate, they may even go extinct. I would like nothing more for us to protect them, but we have our hands full guarding this forest. As loath as I am to ask them for help, I have petitioned the PIDF to assist with their protection. In return, we must pay them a hefty sum, but it is worth it if it means protecting the lives of precious pals. It seems my subordinates have found a way to generate revenue. I will set aside those funds for this endeavor. It seems odd that they would be able to gather such large sums only through raids on the poachers' camps, though.
The islets that Lily mentions are actually the Pal nature preserves, where you can find tons of rare pals, which are also guarded by a group called the Palpagos Island Defense Force, or PIDF, whom the FPA have commissioned to protect pals from poachers. She mentions that the PIDF, in exchange for their protection, require a hefty sum. She further mentions that it's odd to her that her subordinates are able to acquire all the funds just from raiding poacher camps. In the actual game world, you can figure out the sad truth. The FPA do exactly the same thing as the poachers, poaching pals and selling them off to get the necessary funds to prevent the islet pals from being poached, and Lily is none the wiser about the source of said funds. It's a sad message that even the most noble goals can be corrupted by the actions of those working towards them. Leaders need to be able to see the big picture, and Lily clearly is blinded by her obsession with pals, namely her own, to the degree that she isn't able to zoom out and realize the ironic, counterproductive, and corrupt organization she sits on top of. But speaking of corrupt organizations, FPA isn't the only one. Marcus Dryden is the leader of the PIDF, which he has ensured is an exceedingly volatile and unscrupulous group. In other words, they're bad.
What a joke. All the idiots do around here is snort up stims. It's a real dump. There's no point in even trying to control it. PIDF doesn't belong in a place like this. The guys I arrested today couldn't even pay the fine. Guess it's to be expected if they spend all their money getting a fix. Bet they can't even imagine the money they pay ends up lining my pockets. I make a profit when they buy, and then I make more when I arrest them for possession. And I even get back my product to sell again when I confiscate what they have. It's a grand scheme. They're idiots, and I'm a genius. This is just their punishment for being fools. You catch my drift? This island is just my little sandbox to play on. For all I care, they can live their little sad lives without ever knowing I'm the one supplying their fix and the one controlling it. If I let them get carried away, they'll just go off demanding rights that ain't fit for garbage like them. Life out here is not all peace and quiet. The damn wind blows and somehow somebody's cutting into my profits. Just today, some punk little syndicate clown who thinks he's smart tried selling stims without my permission. My partner, Phalaris, is always there to deal with dumb bottom feeders like that. Just like me, he's having fun playing in this little sandbox. Or maybe he just likes eating that white stuff. Huh? Don't look at me like that. Ain't no food today, boy. Go eat some of that white sand. Another peaceful day on the island. More proof we're having fun playing house. Right, Phalaris? Don't worry, I get it. You've got the same eyes as me. You're having fun playing house too, yeah? Or maybe you're just waiting for me to fall over dead. You sure do like eating that white stuff, huh? Maybe the day'll come when I'm just leftovers stuck to your wings. Maybe not. Either way, let's just watch each other's backs until then. Right, partner?
Marcus is the official in charge of the desert island who toys with the lives of the people living there because, like as he calls it, the area is his little sandbox. He sells stims to the people and then arrests them and repossesses his drugs to turn around and sell them again. He even uses drugs to control his pal partner Phalaris in fear that without the cocaina, it'll turn around and eat him the first chance it gets. While Marcus ultimately isn't confident in his ability to control Phalaris, the next tower boss prides himself on just that, control.
On interspecies PAL experiments, results: failure. Attempted to combine various four-legged and winged pals, but no successful patterns emerged. Some combinations succeeded in creating bodies, but these deteriorated in seconds and all were disposed of. Impressions. Reconsideration of chemicals for more response control is necessary. Furthermore, the expansion of species to inspect is also likely necessary. Will reconsider extracting chemicals from Eikthyr deer antlers to create a compound. Storage temperatures also require reconsideration. Note, acquire one ice pal for cooling purposes. Re-examination of base DNA information for the species under consideration is desirable. Analysis of pal DNA information is pressing but requires new equipment. However, the current equipment was coincidentally acquired from outside. There are limits to how far it can be improved. This will require self-made blueprints to create equipment from scratch.
Victor Ashford is the leader of the PAL Genetic Research Unit, and his goal is to create stronger than normal PALs by any means necessary. To accomplish this mission, he begins conducting multiple experiments, including the process that created Shadowbeak, his main PAL companion.
On the distillation and administration of pals to the same species. Results: success. A certain species of pal was dissolved in liquid and concentrated via distillation. Subsequently, the concentrated liquid was administered to a pal of the same species. As expected, the result yielded an enhancement in the abilities of the administered pal. Impressions. This experiment, initiated as an alternative approach towards generating powerful pals, surprisingly yielded favorable outcomes. Theories postulating that pals of a certain species contain the nutrients most necessary for the same type of pal seem valid. This experiment has accordingly resulted in the enhancement of the test pal's abilities. However, there remains a slight doubt regarding whether the observed enhancement surpasses the anticipated values. Perhaps it is not merely a matter of basic nutrients, but rather we must question whether pals inherently possess a distinct energy source essential for their own existence. Further investigation is required.
Victor was also the one responsible for the invention of the PAL condenser, which you, the player, can unlock and use. It can be assumed that Victor gains the PALs needed for the experimentation from doing business with poachers like the Rayne Syndicate.
On interspecies PAL experiments 2. Results: success. Only one specimen emerged, an artificially created new species with 4 legs and wings. It was promptly transferred to the cultivation equipment and has since shown promising progress, steadily maturing. Attempts to reproduce the same process failed. Thus, this miraculous success is attributed to some unknown external factor. Impressions. The success of the experiment is genuinely gratifying. The new species, named Shadowbeak, will continue to be observed closely for further developments. However, the lack of reproducibility of the procedure poses a significant challenge. Henceforth, the plan is to proceed with the experiment, incorporating slight adjustments based on this procedure. Addendum: the disappearance of Alex, who served as a lab assistant, is concerning.
During the last note, he expresses concern about the fact that his lab assistant, Alex, disappeared. Though, he might not have disappeared for good, because there's another character with a name that's likely an anagram.
Yep. Look. Every day I'm snoring, no rivals to get me going. I don't care about they type, ain't nobody gonna beat my height. Yeah, I'm looking for a fight, a real tough brother from another mother. Throwing in the towel just ain't gonna cut it. It's gotta be a knockout, a throwdown brawl out, so fast your eyes will bleed. Yeah, they might fall out. When we ready for battle, best believe the shot gon' rock your socks off. Sawed off, my lightning's tougher than high kings. When it hits the ring, ain't nobody gonna sing for you, player. You ready for this hype? You read the words, so get ready for the fight. Yeah, that's right. So get ready for the fight.
Well, that was something. Axel is a seemingly simple character whose only desire is to fight a strong, worthy rival in an all-out battle. He actually has 2 more journal placeholders in the game's files, so maybe in the future we'll get a more fleshed out idea of his story or past. But while he doesn't have much of a story, the next tower boss, Saya, most certainly does.
The moon on these islands remains unchanged. No, is it the true nature of the moon to change its shape? I do not know. Many years ago, a lost soul who washed up on the shore found it strange that the moon never waned, as if time itself had stopped. That person once said the words, crescent moon. Those words still stir my heart deeply. When the lost moon appears in this world again, it is said it will be like a blade. Will I be able to witness the blade of the moon that signals the beginning? Tonight is also a full moon. Today's sake tastes awful too.
Saya learned from someone who washed up on the shore, perhaps the castaway, that it was unnatural for the moon to remain the same night after night, and furthermore, this unknown person expressed that it was like time didn't pass. After learning that, she strongly desired to witness the crescent moon, and mentions feeling distressed at the fact that nothing ever changes and that they're stuck in some sort of state of stagnation.
For countless ages, we have continued to protect this tower. The reason is unknown. Our conveyed mission is only to maintain this island at a standstill. We hunt the madmen from the snowy mountains who defile the land. We hunt those who proliferated in excess, those who pontificate about research, justice, and such babble to preserve this landscape forever. Yes, we merely exist here. Our time does not pass. It has become unbearable. Only when intoxicated by sake, intoxicated by myself, can I avoid pondering such unnecessary matters. How long has it been since I can no longer enjoy the taste of alcohol? Someone, please, shine a light on this perpetual darkness. Tonight is also a full moon. Today's sake tastes awful too.
Seemingly her only objective, as well as those of the other tower bosses, is to just protect the tower that they're in and keep everything the exact same. The madmen from the snowy mountains she suggests they hunt is probably Victor's faction, and those who have proliferated in excess could be any group that have grown too large, which suggests that her faction is the reason there's not a larger population of people on the island.
There is a disarray among the ones from the volcano. Rumor has it their leader has changed. Before, their ways weren't so extreme, but now they're consumed by a bloody struggle against the maniacs from the White Mountain. Those lunatics, those unscrupulous people who disgrace this place. So, this situation benefits us. But why did they start fighting now? I do not know what their leader is thinking, but I hope they do not tarnish our land. Tonight is also a full moon. Today's sake tastes awful too.
Saya also mentions how the people at the volcano had a recent change in leadership and immediately engaged in a war with the maniacs from the White Mountain. A hint that Axel may actually be Alex, the research lab assistant. Who could have seen this coming?
The moon has reached out to our pitiful selves. The crescent moon I longed for so dearly is now right before me. The everlasting darkness has lifted. It is clear to me, this creature is the one who will lead us to the end. No matter how our time ends, until that moment, I will be with you. Incarnation of the crescent moon, blade of beginnings, please illuminate our path. Tonight is also a full moon. Today's sake tastes delicious. There is one who is trying to pull out the stakes. I hear the sound of the end. Now to just sit and wait. And so, us, who just existed here, please destroy us. With the blade of the crescent moon, let the beginning of our time be announced. And with death, we shall be released from our shackles. Tonight, the moon is hidden from view. Today's sake is incredibly delightful.
Lastly, Sai talks about someone who is pulling out the stakes, which is you, the player, and she begs for you to defeat her so that she can be free from the burden of duty to keep things the exact same forever. While Saya was added to the game quite a while after the original launch of Palworld, this next tower boss was there from the beginning, and is perhaps the most popular antagonist.
I don't have a family. My father disappeared a long time ago, and I've never seen my mother's face. The only ones who raised me are those guys and Griswold. That's why I know I have no choice but to survive in this tiny little world. Those guys all chase around pals with their guns. They capture the ones they hurt and sell them to these other weird guys. In return, they get food. They even share it with me. That's why I don't have to be hungry. I don't think any of those guys really care about me. They just keep me alive because I'm the daughter of one of their bosses. I still believe that, even if I'm a boss now too.
Zoe's parents weren't around. Her father disappeared when she was young, and she doesn't even recall what her mother looked like. The other weird guys that the Syndicate henchmen are capturing and selling pals to could be Victor's group, considering his constant need for so many pals for pal condensing and experimentation.
Griswold was one of the pals they were gonna sell, but she looked so lonely in her cage. She was just like me. And father, I thought. I was still so little back then, so I couldn't control myself. I waited until everybody was sleeping, opened Griswold's cage, and ran off far away with her. I shared half a slice of my breakfast toast with her, but we were both hungry by evening and went back to the base. Of course, all the guys were super angry. They threw me in a cage with Griswold, and I thought we were gonna get taken away. But Griswold protected me. Not even their guns or bats could beat her. How did she even get captured in the first place if she's that strong? I bet she didn't even try to escape. That big dummy. I gave Griswold a command, and she called down a huge bolt of lightning that wiped out all the guys. They didn't wake up until the next morning. Ever since then, I've been with Griswold. There's a group that opposes ours, stationed a little ways away from where we live. They don't like the way we sell pals and use weapons. Our group sneers at them and calls them the Free Pal Alliance. We're always fighting with them for no reason. If I stop and think about it, I bet they're not bad people if they love pals that much. I asked one of the guys who's been around for a long time about it, but he said it was complicated. Apparently, our group has been around for a long time, and we've always been fighting with those FPA guys. He said he doesn't know the real reason behind it, but we've been fighting for so long that there's no hope of ever getting along.
Zoe's questioning of the reason for the conflict between the Syndicate and the FPA, and the response she received about how neither side even really knows why they're fighting anymore, is a consistent theme throughout much of the story.
Sometimes I wonder if there's anything beyond the sea. The only thing I could see far off in the distance is that huge tree. I've never heard anyone talk about what's beyond that place. Apparently, some brave guy from long ago went to see the outside world, but he never came back. I have heard about people coming from beyond the sea, though. I don't know what those kinds of people do, but they say they use tools different from our own. That's why I know there must be something beyond the sea. A whole bunch of islands, a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of things. It sounds scary, but I'd like to try going sometime.
Zoe wonders about the outside world and expresses her desire to explore it, even if it seems scary to her.
I've started to wonder, why am I guarding this big tower again? I always thought it was obvious since Father also used to do this, but now that I think about it, I have no idea why. From what I've heard about it, they say there's a legend passed down on this island. They say this tower is somehow related to that legend, and that it has some big, great power. What kind of power, I wonder? Even if that's true, why does that power have to be protected? Anyway, even though I don't really know why, I'm always here, protecting this tower. There are other towers around the island, and they say people like me guard them all.
The tower bosses don't really know the purpose behind the towers they so desperately guard, or why things are the way they are. Just forced to repeat the same cycle over and over again, you can see why Saya was so desperate for it to end so that she could finally be set free. All Zoe knows is that there's a kind of legend passed down on the island and that the towers are somehow linked to it. The towers themselves also possess a great power. Hey, it's kind of like the obelisk from Ark. And hey, speaking of Ark, if you liked the voice actor I hired for Nerva, most of you probably have no idea what I'm talking about, well, I also hired that same guy to voice this next tower boss from Palworld, Bjorn.
For that day, which may or may not come, I have pursued strength relentlessly. Have I ever doubted its path, even once? Nay, and it seems I shall not end as a fool. The nuisance will surely find its way. Long ago, the wise ones, with the light of their wisdom, raised the towers on these islands as the foundation of a fleeting peace. Now, even as it stirs chaos, the nuisance will see them clearly. How ironic. Is it all bad? Nay. Thanks to this ever-present reminder, I shall not forget my duty. For the nameless souls of the past, I shall slay this one nameless outsider. The burden shall be fulfilled.
The nuisance that Bjorn references is your character. It's great that in the later updates that actually add new characters, they actually refer to your actions. It makes the world feel more alive and reactive to the player, and I hope they continue to do so in future updates. Bjorn mentioned that the wise ones built the towers as a foundation of a fleeting peace, which does give me some ideas as to what the towers are and what their purpose could be.
This place is cursed. Nay, it is I and Bastigor who are cursed. Thousands of years ago, when the colossal fortress still stood in this land, reaching towards the heavens, it appeared suddenly. The heavens shattered and we fell disgracefully. Our kin, who once looked down upon others from the sky, fled in panic, tails between their legs. But I, nay, my ancestors alone, did not abandon this land. Reduced to ashes, nor its people, fallen from the sky, we gathered the bewildered folk and bared our fangs against it. From that moment, we forged an unchanging resolve, becoming the people of the Feybreak. And so, my kin, who once merely sullied the lowest ranks, took a new throne and vowed to bear all burdens.
Bjorn also makes mention of the destruction of his ancestors' colossal fortress by something only referred to as It, which appeared suddenly and began laying waste to the island. All of Bjorn's kin fled from it except his ancestors, who immediately began gathering an army to fight back against it.
The battle against it did not end, even with the aid of a thunder dragon, a pair of celestial beings, and the wisdom of a noble paladin. We could not bring about its destruction. The celestial beings, determined not to let it escape, shrouded the island in an unending winter night. The Black Pegasus melted into the night and vanished. This land became still, unseen, and leaving the island became impossible. The paladin, ashamed of his failure, split himself in two, vowing never to show mercy again. The dragon vanished beyond the reach of the flash, disappearing from sight. In hindsight, perhaps it has now returned, because it has sensed the coming of that day. And now, here we are. It still slumbers. Do I guard this land, truly, for the sake of duty? Nay, no matter the pretense, I cannot hide it. Perhaps I simply wish to meet a worthy foe.
They weren't alone in fighting this threat, as a band of pals also offered their aid. This included the Thunder Dragon, a pair of celestial beings, and a noble paladin. They fought hard against the creature, but were ultimately unable to defeat it. In a last act of desperation to prevent the creature from escaping, the celestial beings shrouded the island in an unending winter night, which made it impossible to leave. Afterwards, the noble paladin split himself into two as repentance for his failure, and the Thunder Dragon disappeared in a flash of light, but has now actually recently returned because it sensed the coming of that day, and that the ancient creature it had fought long ago still slumbers.
I wonder if the lone daughter of Rayne's blood is well. I did her a disservice. In any case, the last time I saw her, she's still at her mother's breast. She will not remember me. Her father and I never saw eye to eye. He was not a man driven by duty or the past. The day we parted ways, I gave him a final test, a foolish pretense. In the end, it was nothing more than childish spite. Surprisingly, he accepted without hesitation. He turned out to be a man of principle, more than I had expected. It was a task even a child could manage, but he never returned. Since then, the young ones who had gathered around him were left without leadership. But it seems his daughter has taken the helm and brought some semblance of order. Though our paths diverged, she has faithfully upheld the mission to guard the tower. Indeed, she is truly your child.
Bjorn then talks about the Rain Girl, referring to Zoe, expressing remorse at the fact that he feels like he's the reason that she had to grow up without a father. Bjorn had disliked her father and challenged him to a test, expecting him to decline like a coward, but the man surprised Bjorn by accepting to go off on the mission and never returned. It's not specified what the challenge was, only that even a child could complete it. Bjorn also mentions that there were young ones that gathered around him which were ultimately left without leadership. This could suggest that the Rain Syndicate henchmen were also children as well when he disappeared, leading to potentially a kind of Lord of the Flies situation before Zoe stepped in and took charge as she got older.
Just if everything were to end, and I were freed from all burdens, what would I do? An old man with little time left. What would I do? Surely I would continue to fight until I crumbled to dust. The world must be vast. Surely there are warriors beyond my imagination, countless in number. If so, perhaps I should repair that old ship. It has been too long since I last sailed the seas. And Bastigor, it is about time for you too as well. After dealing with the nuisance, perhaps I will seek a mate for you.
Bjorn leaves off, expressing that if he was freed of his burdens, he would like to repair one of the wrecked ships and set off in search of the world's strongest warriors to challenge, and how he'd like to find a mate for his partner, Bastigor. Well, that was a lot of information, and unfortunately we're left with more questions than we are answers, but I have some ideas as to the nature of a few ambiguous leads we've got, so let's jump into it. The legendary pals who fought against the creature weren't referred to by name, but with a little research in the PAL deck entries for pals, a few stand out that might give some insight on their true identities. Firstly, the mysterious Thunder Dragon. Bjorn mentions that it disappeared beyond the reach of the flash, and the breaking of the sound barrier sounds a lot like the clap of thunder. So perhaps its name of the Thunder Dragon was actually due to the noise it produced with its breakneck speed. Something that offers credence to this is that Jetragon's PAL deck entry talks about how, when the Calamity awakens again, splitting the earth and setting the heavens on fire, he will destroy it with a glare of complete obliteration. With that information, it could be safe to assume that this is most likely the case. The Thunder Dragon is probably the Jetragon. Next, and probably the most obvious answer, the identity of the two halves of the Noble Paladin, Palladius and Necromus. Their PAL deck entries refer to the fact that they used to be one singular pal at some point in time, which is all but guaranteed to be our mysterious Noble Paladin. Lastly, we have our pair of celestial beings. Celestial is a bit ambiguous, but after some digging through the PAL deck, I think I figured out who they are. Frostalion and Frostalion Noct state in each of their respective PAL deck entries about them being known as the Winter Caller and the Night Caller. When a calamity struck the land, they soared into the sky sky and sealed away the threat by casting the island into an eternal winter night. So with the guardian deities figured out, let's speculate as to the identity of the ancient threat. Unfortunately, there's no clear answer that we can come to as to what they might be, probably because Pocket Bear is going to add it as the final boss for their 1.0 release. But we can always make a guess while pondering over the journal and PAL deck entries. Something about Bjorn's choice of language in referencing the heavens shattering and then having fallen from the sky in relation to the calamity-causing creature leads me to consider if the calamity was in fact aliens. Hear me out. Throughout your exploration of the islands, you've surely come across meteorite drop events where, upon reaching it, you're attacked by alien-like pals like Xenovader and Xenoguard, whose PAL deck entries make mention that they're sending information to someone. With the release of Feybreak, a new summonable boss was released as well, just a little something called Xenolord. Xenolord's PAL deck entry makes mention that it's in search of something called the Supersonic Dragon, which sounds a lot like Jet Dragon. It also mentions that the conquest deadline was exceeded by error code 126 DC years. So depending on what the error code refers to as the amount of years, it could very well line up with the calamity thousands of years ago. If we're assuming the calamity is indeed an alien invasion, we have to wonder, why have they taken thousands of years to invade the island only to basically make no progress up to the present day? I believe it has something to do with the towers and the world tree itself. See, when you first wash up on the island, your tablet displays a cryptic message that states that the towers are the key and the world tree holds the truth. The meteorite events don't spawn in the starting areas around the first tower, so it can be assumed gameplay-wise that players typically don't witness their first meteor drop event until after they've defeated the first tower. I think that's intentional, and that the game wants you to make a correlation that as you beat the towers, the Xeno invaders are able to start invading your world. My theory is that the towers are sealing the way to the world tree, and that either in or under the world tree resides the calamity slumbering away, awaiting the day when it can reawaken and wreak havoc anew. As to the identity of the calamity, that is more than likely the ruler of Xenos, potentially a Xeno queen or something of that nature. And without their leader, the Xeno invasion ground to a halt until you began loosening the barrier on the world tree. And if that's the case, would that make you the villain? You, the player, loosening the seal, keeping the calamity locked away? Well, yes and no. See, the island has been in a sense of stagnation for thousands of years, sealed away with no way to escape and completely cut off from the rest of the world. The denizens forced to remain in a perpetual state of existence that never changes and not even remembering the reason for their missions. This is especially obvious in Zoe, Saya, and Bjorn's journal notes, where they express dissatisfaction at the fact they're being forced to guard the towers forever, bound to their duty, and Zoe and Saya not even knowing the reason behind their lifelong duty. The people of the Palpagos Islands are prisoners, and your quest to seek out the world tree and defeat the calamity will free them. But that's just a theory. Again. Ultimately, we'll just have to see what Pocket Bear has in store for us in the coming updates leading up to their 1.0 release, and I really hope they do some more of those dope cinematics like from the Feybreak trailer. Come on guys, please bring your characters to life and make it authentic. Palworld has many intersecting plot lines, and although they are simple, they are substantive. Whether it's the conflict between Victor and his old lab assistant, Saya, Bjorn, and Zoe's frustrations of being duty-bound to guard their respective towers forever, or the hypocrisy of Lily's FPA and her ignorance to their misguided actions, the narrative is being fleshed out over time, and as Palworld releases each major update, we're able to watch that story expand into a compelling tale that enables us to be even more immersed as time goes on. Because as you're playing the game, why wouldn't you want to have a deeper connection and understanding to the backstory of the very world that you're playing in? Pocket Bear is doing an amazing job in the lore department, and I can't wait to see what direction they go in the future in regard to the Castaway, the towers, the world tree, and even the calamity that someday may threaten the Palpagos Islands again. But what do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below on Palworld's lore and any ideas you might have on how everything ties together. Like this video if it was helpful or entertaining, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye everyone.